This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 44.
But the best thing I've ever told people, you know what? When you're having a problem, just stop. Just turn it off. Go in the house, do whatever you need to do and walk away and come back with a fresh sense because you'll get it. You got this machine running.
This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by themakersguide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm the host, Bill Griggs, and I'm very fortunate today to have Mike Heidrick with me. Mike has been a person that I've looked up to for quite a while because of the amazing things that he has done. And I first met him in the Joe's CNC community, where he was building a router table very similar to the one that I was building, except Mike likes to take things to extremes, and I think it's really cool. I think you're going to love your story, and you should enjoy meeting Mike. How's it going today, Mike?
Hi, Bill. Thanks, everybody. Bill and I have been friends as we went through our builds together, and I'm found that really the CNC DIY community is filled with great people all over the world, really, that are building amazing machines. So don't let him discredit his machine by any means.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, so where are you from, Mike?
So I live in Bloomington, Illinois, kind of downstate, and kind of got into woodworking at about 2005 when I finally got a home that had a shop that was big enough to warrant start to build things. Mm-hmm. And about that time, about 2006, a friend said, "Hey, I think I'm going to learn to build a CNC router table." And I was kind of interested in that. I really didn't know much about it. And the story went that another friend heard that I was kind of interested in it, and he was going to give me a broken machine that was a little 18-inch cutting area machine. And he did not build it, and he really didn't know how it worked. And so as I started looking at the machine, I started investigating who actually built the first one. Mm-hmm. And I met my friend Nathan. And when Nathan came over and we started talking, he said, that he would love to someday build a Joe's machine. And I didn't know what a Joe's machine was or any of that. And after he left that night, I went and investigated the Joe's machine, and I called him the next day and I said, "Well, I don't think I'm going to fix your old machine. I think I'm just going to build a Joe's." And he said, well, you can't build a Joe's. And I said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "Well, it's your first machine. You don't start out building a Joe's machine for your first machine." And I said, "Well, if you're on your third machine, I don't want to build the first and second one. I just want to go to the one you want." And so that's how I found the Joe's website and all my friends there. Invested the money to join the forum, and at the time I couldn't believe that I was paying money to join a forum, and looking back, that's probably the best money I think I've ever spent on any of this hobby. Oh, yeah. I don't know how you feel, Bill.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. You just couldn't know how much information would be coming out of that and how many great conversations that would get started with people. It's just amazing. And the beauty of the Joe's community was that it narrowed my research, if you will, from the plethora of amazing information that's on CNC Zone. It was just too overwhelming for me as a newbie. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to focus in on, different machines, all somewhat similar. And it allowed me to really focus in and learn pieces to get my machine built rather than
asking blinded questions on CNC Zone and maybe getting 1 or 2 responses. You had a community where there were 50 people of like-minded ideas all trying to get to the same goal. Yeah. And, you know, the friend that originally introduced me, Brett, when he said he was going to learn how to do it, he went down that path by himself. He'd never settled for, you know, any one design or any one plan. And he struggled. He really did. He built an amazing machine at the end, but it cost him money, because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny when you first get the plans from Joe, you're like, wow, 22 pages or whatever the count's up to these days. Mine's an older machine that he had. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here. But as you go through the build, you learn to read between the lines, and you realize what you don't know and how important, you know, 3D drawings are, and the ability to hide different parts of the build as you're studying it in order to figure out what it is you're doing. The beauty for me of Joe's was being able to buy it and purchase the parts kind of ad hoc. And as I saved up the money, I wasn't ever forced to outlay a ton of money or go into debt to get my CNC machine. I just purchased parts as I could save up for them. Yeah. And for me, that was critical. This is a hobby. I don't do this as a business, but I take my hobbies to an extreme level. And I never wanted any debt to come out of this. If I make money, that's awesome. And that provides money to go back into the different hobbies. But for me, it was, just doing this myself and complete. And I remember a pivotal point for me. At one point, I had bought. At the time, it was about 12 different $300 purchases. Was roughly as I was going through my bill of materials and everything I was putting together. And I remember at one point I had about $1,500 worth of just metal and parts laying on the floor. And I looked at it and I was like thinking, boy, I sure hope this works, because there was no way I was getting that money back out of that pile of raw materials.
Yeah, you're not taking the Unistrut bag, no.
Yeah, after you get in, you're sourcing parts from friends. Not all of it's new, and we're all trying to do this as realistically as we possibly can, and for the least amount of money that we can, and. At some point I just had to start. I had to start working those materials, breaking them down into digestible chunks. Yeah. And I don't remember who told me, but they're like, just move forward. Even if you don't understand, just move forward. And I remember after I got my machine running, when it first started jogging, because you had built it yourself, you understood every little segment component that you had put together in those steps when you built it. Mm-hmm. And it seemed simple because it was 3 motors, each one turning highly precisely, but a motor only turns right or left. And to get that to perform, 3 operations at one time makes for this awesome machine. But by building it myself, I really felt like I had a great understanding of how those 3 axes worked.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at a set of plans like that, and you realize just how much went into designing that, for Joe, right from the start. But each simple portion of that was one simple thing. And if you understood that one thing, you could understand the next one and the next one. And it wasn't like drinking from the fire hose.
Right. Yeah. And, you have friends over, or you have customers come over and they see you working, and they are just blown away, because that's exactly it. They're trying to digest what you've just built in minutes. Yeah. And it's hard to comprehend it when you see it all together. But when you've spent 30 days or 2 months or however long it takes you to build those parts. And especially if you purchase your machine in digestible chunks and get started and start building even before you have all the parts purchased, you have the time to really understand what it is you're doing, to ask questions of people who have built before you or that are currently building, to learn from their mistakes. That's another beauty of the Joes, is that everyone's so willing to share, hey, I've had these problems, or I've had these, situations come up, or I want to do this. What do you think? And in this big think tank community allows us to continually get better as a group.
Yeah. And that think tank environment also made the plans better, because as, someone would come up with a better modification, they were sharing it. They were showing, how it was done, or they were adding it on. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when I started out, and when I found Joe's plans to begin with, and for those of our listeners who don't know who Joe is, Joe Cantrell, he was on previous episodes of the CNC Router Tips podcast, episode 24 and episode 25. There'll be links in the show notes to those, but you can go to cncroutertips.com/24 to get to the episode 24, or you can go to cncroutertips.com/25 to get to episode 25. But Joe designed his machine, and I gave up on a design that I was working on in order to build his machine instead of continuing down the road I was on. And Mike, I don't know if you remember, but when I started, I was going to make a slant bed version of Joe's machine, very much like a panel saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I was doing all the drawings up in a Libre design, which is now Geomagic design, I think. 3D Systems bought it up like everything else. And anyway, I was very far into that build, when I discovered that I hadn't taken into account the height of the, trusses in my basement where it was supposed to go.
And I remember that.
I had already started cutting metal, and
I remember when I started building my machine and I got it running, I had been spending about a year's worth of weekends with a local cabinet maker named Gary, and good friend of mine. He also has the same day job I do, and he thought when I first started it that I was just crazy, because he was a very focused cabinet maker, power tool. He knew how to make money doing woodworking, and that's what he focused on. And here's Mikey, this guy that does it for fun and to teach himself how to do things. I go down these paths of learning that most people won't even consider, just to do it, just to teach myself. And when I got my machine running and he came over, he was blown away. Mm-hmm. And he realized that all of the work he was doing in cabinet making required installs and huge finishing jobs when he was done. And that's a ton of work for anybody that's never done cabinets. And it's backbreaking work. Mm-hmm. And this was all an additional job for him because we already had full-time jobs. So when he saw what I was able to do and the money I was able to make with smaller scale items and the profits that you can turn with those niche items, mm-hmm. he wanted to invest the money immediately into a machine. Now, he didn't want to build a Joe's. He didn't want to go down that path. And the CNC router parts guys are basically partners in crime with us, mm-hmm. for a lot of the Joe's builders, because their carriages and their mechanisms and gantries and stuff like that really led to Joe being able to release a design that allowed us to customize our machine with still having some critical components professionally made.
Yeah.
And when they got to the point where they could release a package was about the time that Gary decided he was going to invest. And they have an amazing set of machines too, that if your listeners are looking for a kit but don't want to go down the path of manufacturing parts like you might get into with a Joe's machine, the CNC router parts are excellent machines. And he was able to purchase a machine and get, in a couple shipments, basically all the mechanics that took me weeks and weeks and weeks to create and to, turn raw materials into.
Yeah. And that was the one downside of building it through the Joe's. You had to source your own materials, and there were so many options that it took you a while to decide. And because of that, you ended up paying multiple shipping fees.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look at any purchase, when you go to a Joe's machine, there's bill of materials where people have outlined everything they purchased. And, the line items for shipping and just the number of orders that you'll place is like I said, for me, it was great because it allowed me to pay for it, in chunks. But again, Gary was trying to go down the path of a business where time's money for him. Yeah. So he wanted to get this machine up in short order, and he was willing to pay more for that. The beauty of him working with me was I knew the electronics in and out. Yeah. I had designed the Mikey controller. I had released that design on the Joe's forum. I had helped 3 or 4 different people build ones across the United States and a couple people in other countries. And then 3 local people here also basically contracted me to build their controller. And it's really was using Gecko controls and doing all the electrical wiring and the switches and the relays and that kind of stuff. And because, Gary was my friend, when he placed his order, by the time he placed his order, I had a controller built for him. Mm-hmm. So literally one weekend, we spent 9 hours assembling a CNC router parts machine. And at the end of the 9 hours, the machine was jogging because we had the controller out of the way and the base. You talk about, designs and the community. I don't remember who it was that released that 4x4 steel base schematic that a lot of us have built. There was a couple that were breakdown style, but I chose to go with an all welded design. And really that was because Gary had decided he wanted a welded base. And my first machine was Unistrut. And as it was running, that was one of the things I didn't like was the shimmy that I got by only using C-channel Unistrut in my base rather than using box steel.
Yeah,
if I could change, building it out of wood.
If I could change one thing about my machine, that would be it. I just haven't gotten to it. I bought a welder and welding equipment, just haven't gotten to it.
Yeah, and Gary took he was going to go into the CNC router parts machine, and he had taken the schematics and that we had got from the Joe's, and he had a local welder build his machine. Well, some work came up, and it pushed Gary out about a month and a half on his build. So I was able to purchase his steel base or his steel stand already completely welded. And when this was, like I said, about a year into having my machine running, I decided to go with Harry's cast CNC carriages and upgrade my machine. And that's something I can't stress enough about these builds as well, is we're not locked into one design for the life of the machine.
Right.
We're able to.
I think I'm on my third or fourth design. Yeah.
Yeah, we can change it any way we want because exactly how it's built. And you know how to disassemble it and change it into something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I was able to take my Unistrut base and change it over to a welded steel base. And I sold my Unistrut base to another guy who wanted a deal on building a first level Joe's hybrid. He wasn't, didn't want to invest the money in the steel base. So I made him an awesome deal on the Unistrut, and it helped me source mine. And so that got me into a welded base about the same time as a Harry's CNC machine, a Harry's cast CNC build of the Joe's hybrid.
Yeah.
And
Harry was one of the members of the forum.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He does some amazing work outside of CNC in the industry, and just a great guy willing to share any knowledge that he has.
Yeah, his website was castcnc.com, but I don't believe that he's producing parts anymore.
Yeah, he's moved on to greater things. I think we see that sometimes in the community where, when people are building machines and helping each other out low scale, it's one thing. But when these guys learn how to make big money, it doesn't always pay for them to produce some of these smaller end parts. So I respect what he's done, but I'm so thankful that I got in when I did.
Yeah.
But because of where the cast CNC carriages went and the all metal machines, getting away from some of the HDPE parts and MDF parts that we had on the original Joe's hybrid, I think that's how we ended up with the Joe's Evolution. Joe created this all metal machine. So now, with a combination of some different 80-20 selections, a 30-60 gantry, some of these pieces, that Evolution machine is amazing. Joe or Bill, have you had the chance to see an Evolution in person?
I have not, but I've helped a few people build one over the phone and through Skype. It's kind of funny. I've seen the massive piece of 80-20 that they're using on there, the larger beam.
That 3060 is just absolutely amazing. The Brett guy, the guy that built his original machine the same time I did, he used that 3060 right from the very beginning because it worked with some of the CNC router parts. And when I was over at his house and he got that extrusion and I lifted it, and I had, by that time, my was it 1520 or whatever the extrusion was that we used on the original hybrid machine. It was shockingly different, that the mass of that 3060 extrusion. And now Joe's got that incorporated into his machine. So today, if someone's starting build, you'll go straight to an Evolution. You'll never, I doubt anyone would go through the hybrid unless they just really couldn't afford the difference. And to me, it looks like a relatively small difference in price, less than $500 difference between an Evolution build and a hybrid build.
Yeah, and the path to getting your hybrid built is so much simpler than building or getting an Evo built. Excuse me. The Evolution is nicknamed the Evo. Built is so much quicker than building your own stuff for the hybrid. Now, in both cases, joescnc.com offers kits for building whichever version of the machine that you choose to make. But
yeah, you can source parts, the main critical components right from Joe that he makes right in his own shop. And as well as, he provides the plans if you want to make your own. You're more than welcome to do that, but he makes it easy for you to source some of these parts. And like I said, the Evo really needs some machine parts, some aluminum parts to get up and running. But the result is just a fantastic design. Yeah. Like I said, I'm so thankful to Joe and everything that he's done for me and my shop over the years. And like I said, as well as all the sister companies that he's partnered with, it's really changed the direction in my shop, right? And also, because of that, my friends, because I've steered them down the path. They come and they see what they like or whatever, and I say, hey, this is what I did, but if I was doing it now, here's where I would go. And so that's why I say the community is always getting better. So
for me,
after I had my machine running, And I've made some upgrades. I also did the spindle upgrade. There were some guys online that liked the Mikey controller, and they wanted a spindle option. And a couple people paid me to figure out how to do the spindle option on my controller. And so that's what I did. They basically paid for my test bed, if you will, so that I could figure it out for them, and then they could just order the parts and wire it up and not have to figure out, getting Modbus to work on controllers with Mach and all these different pieces. But I really like the spindle option that I've done with my machine, Bill. But honestly, I don't know that it's appreciably better for the work that I do than a regular router, a 2.25 horsepower router or larger. Other than being quieter, and the ability to reverse and use some left-handed tooling, stuff like that. I really think that you have to watch how much you spend. And unless you just have unlimited money or unlimited time to figure it out, I think that there's ways to build machines economically. And I think that's important for me as a DIY guy who's not doing this as a business to try and figure out, what makes the most sense for me. And especially, I'm very fortunate in the tools I found, the deals I found, but there's a lot of guys that don't have a lot of tools when they first start a CNC build. I was shocked at the number of people that have, a drill press and a circular saw, and they go to building a CNC machine. Mm-hmm. Whereas I look at it like CNC operations is less than 20% of the work in my end product. So, I look at it as another step or tool in a toolbox, not as being the only tool or the one main tool that I have. And I think it's just where people start at. I was a woodworker that came to CNC, but I think that there's a lot of people that start at CNC and then try to become a woodworker on the backside.
That's me. That's what happened with me. I built a CNC and then learned woodworking because I always wanted to do it. But one of the things about woodworking is it requires a whole bunch of equipment. And often, that's not something most people can afford. And the CNC router actually replaces several, or could replace several of those tools, when you think about it. I mean,
sure.
Things that you can do on a bandsaw, for instance, or in many cases, on a table saw, drill press,
countless jigs.
Yeah. I mean, it can do those things. It may not be the most efficient use of it, but it can do those things.
I learned a lot from luthiers, and 2 or 3 different hobbies really take people to CNC. People that are luthiers, people that are into remote controlled RC products, and people that are, just into these eclectic builds. And the beauty of a luthier is, if they're good, it's like one of the most underappreciated arts that I've ever seen, because a guy that wants a guitar built expects automotive quality finish on a guitar, but they don't want to pay. They want it as cheap as possible, just like every other hobby, right? And so these luthiers develop talents that I just awe-inspiring. I feel like I'm pretty good at shooting cabinets and shooting lacquer. These people take finishing to a whole new level. I mean, literally automotive quality finish, in my opinion, and learning from them. And a lot of luthiers have very small workspaces, at least the ones that I've met. A lot of guys, and let's say the guys that got into building, smaller router tables are doing it in less than one bay in their garage, So if you take up a 2x3 machine or a 2x4 machine, or like we did 4x4, which is 72-inch extrusions on the X and Y axis, all of a sudden you don't have a lot of room for these other woodworking tools, right?
I'm running into that now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you learn to work with the space that you have. And I've seen a couple CNC builders start out with a 4x4 and then switch to a 2x3. And because they've built a Joe's machine or a DIY machine, they're able to convert their whole machine and reconfigure the base and use the same parts they already have.
Yeah. They're only changing the x-axis, really.
Yeah, the x-axis and maybe why if they want to go a little shorter, cutting some rack, but the machine itself really still stays the same. Mm-hmm. And because, like I said, you've worked the parts when you built your Joes, you worked the parts, you know how to shorten them, and you know what you need to be concerned about as far as of having the additional links in the axes you need. And so it's really allowed us to hone in on the pieces that we need to create the products we want. That's the most important thing that I talk to people about when they say, Mikey, I want to build a CNC machine. I was like, tell me what you want to create, and I'll help you get to the perfect machine.
Yeah, that is so critical. I know that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I hadn't, gotten into this particular forum and learned and grew with everybody. But it is true. You gotta know what it is that you want to make. And, if you're like me, and you're easily distracted, you'll find that you may never actually get to the point where you're making what it was that you started out to make.
Sure.
Because you're so tied up in other projects and hobbies and things that come up as you're learning. Because half of the fun for me is learning, and the other half is actually making something. Maybe not necessarily over and over again, but I love the first time you do something that nobody else thought of, or just a little bit different or a little bit better. That's the cool part for me.
CNC for me, I'm an IT guy during the day, and all day long I work on these machines and I get return code 0 and I execute commands and I get the okay when it comes back. And there's nothing tangible about the work that I get paid to do. And CNC takes that to the next level. It allows you to use code, to use drawings that you're working on, and produce something. Something moves. You can touch the product you create. And that's the reward, I think, that I get out of doing what I do.
There is every single one of your senses is engaged in a CNC project. You can smell the wood cutting. You can taste the sawdust on your tongue.
Yeah.
Where you can see it moving, you can feel it, you can hear it. And
yeah. And you know when it's not right, or when something's different. You do this long enough, the sounds, the smells. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden something's not right, or you pick up on depth differences or something, something about your cuts. You spot it. Mm-hmm. And again, because you've built that machine, you can correct it. Yeah. Or you have a good idea of where to start looking. And I tell people, like, the power is in ordering the parts that are broken at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Yeah. And not waiting to have to call a vendor on Monday.
Exactly. And worry about the vendor trying to troubleshoot it from across the country.
Or to say, we don't support that anymore. Or, you know what, I really want to sell you on this new solution. You know what? You are the solution. You know what needs upgraded, or where you want to take your machine, or what you just want to leave alone because it's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. You're in the power. Now, you take risk, right? When you don't know, you're trying to lean on friends and lean on the forums to get some advice. And it can be frustrating, mm-hmm. But the best thing I've ever told people, you know what, when you're having a problem, just stop. Just turn it off. Go in the house, do whatever you need to do and walk away and come back with a fresh sense, because you'll get it. You got this machine running, mm-hmm. And I think that worries a lot of folks. The electronics worries a lot of folks. I think the not having that vendor in your corner worries, but again, when I do this as a hobby, I don't have a lot of support money to throw at this, or I don't choose to throw the money at support. I'm the support, right? And I'm confident in making the connections with people and in the community that I've chosen, which is the Joe's community, to be my boost of confidence.
So, Mike, just, so that we don't turn this whole thing into a Joe's CNC fest, although we could, because it's well-deserved, in my opinion, well-deserved. But one of the things that you did that really intrigued me and impressed me was when you decided that you needed a bigger workspace and that you had finally reached the point in your life where you were going to build your shop your way. Let's talk about the Mikey space a little bit.
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
One of the things that you did that really intrigued me and impressed me was when you decided that you needed a bigger workspace and that you had finally reached the point in your life where you were going to build your shop your way. Let's talk about the Mikey space a little bit.
Okay, so I'm so enamored with the thought of makerspaces.
Me too.
And these larger cities that have the luxury of having a community that can just, really deliver solutions and opportunities for the mass, if you will, that the average person just can't really acquire or doesn't have the room for. And so from going from CNC and getting into metalworking and 3D printing and electronics and all these places that my hobbies have taken me, I was trying to get with some local business leaders, if you will, to come up with some ideas on getting a makerspace in my local community. And one of the challenges that a lot of communities face is that the leaders only think big business, right? And especially for me, the ones that have investigated makerspaces and seeing the millions of dollars it takes to set one of those up, for real, they didn't have any interest in doing it because it looked like too big of a project. And I spent over a year in meetings, every month, meeting with the same people over and over. And I wasn't getting anywhere, Bill. I was getting a lot of we need, to worry about funding, and we need to figure out how we're going to source all this, and we need all these permits and all this stuff. Meanwhile, around me in some of the different communities within an hour's driving distance of me, I was seeing folks attempting to create makerspaces. And they went down the opposite end of the spectrum, where all of a sudden they had 30 or 40 people that wanted to do it, none of which wanted to invest their own money. And they had to somehow come up with a space, and they didn't really have any of the tools to build out a space. So all of a sudden, they put a lease down, or they get a lease, and they have to figure out how to come up with rent every month and keep this a viable solution with really no, limited tools. And it seems like a lot of them start at the 3D printing world because that's a fairly easy tool to acquire in a small space. Yeah. And, a lot of these places end up having 2 or 3 printers, and they do some arts and crafts, and that's really hard to keep people motivated. Well, I got sick of all this, and I decided that I had a $50,000 problem. I'm fortunate to have land where I live, and I just called some Amish guys and had them build a big building. because I had the tools to basically run my own makerspace already. And I didn't like the ideas of having to have panels of people and boards of people making decisions. It got to the point where I decided, well, I'm going to do it myself, my way. I can make my own decisions, right? And when you don't have to worry about coming up with rent or anything, you don't have to, it frees you up from a lot of these different vices that a lot of these decisions are based on.
Yeah.
I didn't have the roadblocks that a lot of these other spaces have to manage. And the beauty of it was, if I did it myself, I could do it my way, right? And I could choose the tools that I want in there, and I don't have to get permission from anyone else. And if I'm running the place, my friends are hooked up. The people that I enjoy being around, the kids that I enjoy being around, are the ones that are going to win.
Yeah.
And I've got two girls. I've got Megan, who's about to turn 10, and Lily, who just turned 7. And they don't know,
makers.
Bill, that people don't have robots at their house. They've never been in an environment where they couldn't try to build something. No matter what they come up with, we can try it, right? And my company that I work for, we bring so many people into this community, external jobs and bringing new jobs in and all this stuff. And a lot of them live in apartments and these small, townhouses, and they don't have any space to do the same thing for their kids. And I don't care if I can put parents with their kids in front of things. I don't care if they learn a single thing, Bill. I don't care if they learn about robots or not. But if I make a memory of them spending time together, that's it for me, man. That is the biggest charge I get on this whole space of my hobbies. And I want to give back. I want to give that to people. I'm not a philanthropist. I'm not any of this other stuff. I'm not doing this to make money. I'm doing this because I like to do it with my own kids, and I want to give that opportunity to other people. I want to teach people. I want people to teach me, because what I find is, on my floor, like I said, I'm an IT guy. There are so many hidden talents amongst the guys on my floor. It just takes a matter of getting to know them. And if I can turn some of that into some of the hobbies that I like and learn from them, or maybe teach them something, or teach these kids, we talk about people not making things in the United States or whatever. It's because people are on their phones too much, or they're on, I really believe that, on the computer, on the internet. I'm not anti-technology. I'm probably the most technology person that I know of, but it's directed, it's focused. And that, to me, is what the Makerspace is being built for, is a place where I can spread out and I can have, I felt 5 people build machines locally, all in a 1,000 square foot detached shop. That was my first shop. I'm out of room. You get a milling machine and you get a Joe's router 4x4, and then you get some other woodworking equipment. Man, it goes fast. And all of a sudden I didn't have space to teach. And so then, like I said, I called the boys. They came and built me a steel building, and I'm finishing the inside out myself. Why? Because I want to do the same thing like my router, purchase it and pay for it as I get the money. I don't want huge debt because of all this stuff. I want to be able to do it and not impact anything, but at the same time, I want to do it my way. And I've put 3-phase rotary phase converter in there. I've got more outlets than anybody has ever seen. You've seen my slat wall design that I'm doing for my walls. These are all ideas I've been building up over the last 5 years. Now why? Because it makes sense to me.
Let's slow down for a second. Okay. So we're talking about your Makerspace. Okay. How big is it?
It's 40 by 64 with 16-foot tall walls to the bottom of the trusses.
Okay. And you put in in-floor heating.
Yeah. So I didn't know how to do that. I had to teach myself how to do that. If you do a search on YouTube for Bloomington Mike, you'll find my radiant floor heat walkthrough now, because just like Joe's, I didn't know, and I taught myself, but I don't want the next person to start from square zero.
Exactly. Each one teach one, as my mom used to say. Yep. So you put in right from the foundation of this thing, you were doing things differently. So you put in the in-floor heating, and then, it's essentially a pole barn after that, and it went up quick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But the garage doors that you could drive the space shuttle through.
My thought was, people are like, how'd you size your doors, Mikey? And I said, you know what? They're 14 foot by 14 foot. And they said, well, why'd you pick that? That's huge. And I said, well, because the main road going down to where my house is has an overpass that's 13.9. And I figure if they can drive down my road, they can drive in my shop. And I'm leaving the middle between the doors. There's doors at the east and west ends so that you can drive through, because I like to bring my materials in with my truck, and I want to take my products that I finally make out through the same doors. And I wanted to be able to just drive through. So I've got a metalworking section in this building. I've got a woodworking section in this building with path to drive right through the middle. And I've got my workflow set up where my tools are going to be, so that everything flows with what I think is a very efficient manner. Right. And, you talk about the doors. So I decided I wanted a projector in the shop, because, when you're watching videos or whatever you want to do, having a projector is nice, but I didn't want to use my wall space up for the projection screen. And I was looking at those doors, and I looked at the frame of the garage door and said, you know what? I'm going to hang a projector screen underneath the frame of my garage door, so that my doors still go up and over the top of the door, or over the top of the screen. But the projector screen, I bought a power retracting one. And the funny part was, they're like, you put a 200-inch screen in there, Mike. And I said, yeah, because it was cheaper than a 160-inch screen. Because no one puts a 200-inch screen up, and they were cheap. So I found a powered screen that I put below my door, and we hung a projector in there, and now we've got a theater out there. And I know a lot of people with home theaters, and a lot of my friends are into it. But Bill, I don't know anybody that owns a drive-through or their own drive-in. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because now you can pull your vehicle in there and watch a movie. So it's kind of a running joke around here about the Mikey's drive-in.
The funny part to me is you do a lot of reuse, recycle in this project. You've gone through, you found a real sweet deal on plywood, short half sheets of plywood, and you bought a ton of that, and you bring it in, and you're still using that.
Yeah.
And you found at the Habitat for Humanity Restore, great place for people to get things that have either been used or are excess materials from building projects, and it goes for a good cause. The Habitat Restore. But you stumbled across a really sweet deal on your chairs for your drive-through.
So I wanted to be able to have some seating for watching movies out there, but I didn't want them to be permanent, right? I didn't want to have chairs that you couldn't move. So I found their medical recliners that came from an eye surgical place, and I just lucked out. I wasn't looking for them. I just happened to show up and saw my chairs that were on casters. And so now we have these recliners that not only are they on casters, but they have handles so that you can move them around. And so, it's funny. I'm always looking, I'm always researching, because again, I want to be able to, purchase things as I can afford them. I would never be able to afford chairs like that if I had to pay full price, right? So things like Craigslist and the Restore, Friends Online, eBay, all of those things have played critical roles in me sourcing the products that I put in the shop and finishing this thing out. And being able to recycle and reuse something just has its own innate benefits to your community, and especially with Habitat, with the money going back to support local builds just makes you feel good about buying from them anyways. And then to get something that you can actually use, man, it's just win-win for sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, my buddy Tony comes out about every Sunday and helps me. He really believes in what I'm doing, and he gives us time to connect and to talk about different things besides just work or whatever. And I think that just like you were talking about your friend, you've talked in the past about friends helping you with your builds, and I've watched you post pictures of your family and friends helping you. Mm-hmm. There's benefits to doing this stuff yourself that go beyond just the machines or using CNC or whatever. And making those friendships is better than any project that I've ever made.
It's priceless. One of the things that really motivates me with this thing, of doing this is the fact that when you start doing, building your own CNC, or even if you go out and buy one and you bring it into your environment, your friends start coming around, and then they bring friends and they tell other friends. And before long, you've built a little community around your machine. And sometimes, from a business standpoint, you end up creating business. Other times you end up creating things for your friends. Either case, it's a win-win situation, because, now they're seeing what's possible, and, and they're sharing that. And getting the whole cottage industry thing going again in America is a big deal to me. I think that's probably the biggest benefit and legacy that I hope to leave behind. Because of what I'm doing and what I'm sharing, maybe somebody can figure out how they can do their own thing, whatever it is, wherever they are.
The biggest passion I have is trying to teach people something before they need to use it, right? Whether it's using different tools or whatever. I say it all the time. People are like, "You have your kids doing what?" And I said, you know what? I want my girls using tools now before they ever need to use them in the future. I don't want them to grow up, have a problem, and the first time they're grabbing a tool is the first time they've ever touched it. Mm-hmm. And the same thing. I want to teach these kids just a spark of the potential that they could do. Because if they apply, the schooling that they get from the teachers and the people in their life that help them learn, in addition to giving, ideas maybe that are non-traditional that I might be able to provide, I think that's the real power. Because, what my girls have taught me more than anything is they are so smart from such a young age, a lot more than I ever expected, and by opening up opportunities to them now, man, it just lets them grow, right? And that's what I want to do. And I think that if we show more kids, or we give kids more opportunities, or adults, or people looking to retool, we talk about the milling machine. I bought a milling machine from 1987. The controls were completely broke. I paid scrap price for the machine, 4,500 pounds. And I gutted that thing, Bill. And just with the confidence from building my CNC router, I re-outfitted that mill and got it running. Bill, if that would have been my primary job, that's like adding an employee. And our problem is that the businesses that can deal with that much weight or that size of machine don't have time, or don't take the time to learn to do it. And most of the people that, the 1- and 2-man shops either lack the confidence or the time or the knowledge to get out there and to do that themselves. But when I explain it and I walk them through and I show them the tools and the documentation that's available out there, then all of a sudden it makes it a little easier to digest, and they start thinking about doing it a little more. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we provided more tools to the people that are in these industries and taught them, hey, you don't need to be a mega corporation in order to have automation in your shop, I think that's the way that we get producing more materials locally as a viable option. And you know what? I love the major manufacturers of these CNC metalworking tools. I think they're fantastic. But the barrier to entry and those price points are just out of reach.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's got to make money. I get it. But you know what? We've got a boneyard of equipment from the 80s and 90s that's sitting there, not even being used, being sold for scrap, because the people that are in that industry don't take the time to repurpose it. And then the other times, the guys that are trying to work out of a garage or a small shop don't even know that that's approachable. And there's people like us that have learned and that have some experience and are just ready to take on that challenge. And more importantly, willing to give back the chance to teach others how to do it. That's what's really going to spark this.
Yeah. And, you know, there is so much waste in some of the larger organizations. I work sometimes at a local college, and they recently retooled their metal shop. And so they had all these old South Bend lathes that they replaced with newer equipment that's more readily available. And because of that, because it was a state-run college, they had to send those old pieces of machinery to a central department to be disposed of.
Wow.
And most of them got scrapped instead of being offered in someplace like, eBay or whatever. And so, they were scrap metal, perfectly functioning, lathes, a dozen of them, or six or, and I can't bid on them, of course, because, that would be a conflict of interest, but.
Sure. And I don't know about your organizations, but the one I work for is so darn risk adverse about doing any of this stuff. They would never mess with repurposing large equipment like that due to somebody just might be getting hurt when they move it or whatever. Right. And you know what? We got to get over some of this, and we got to put some responsibility back on people. We got to take some risks. If we're going to make some changes, we can't sit here and say, you know what, somebody might, scratch their finger or whatever. I get it, and large organizations aren't going to make that kind of change. But people like me, again, when you get back to the Makerspace and doing it my way, I no longer have to worry about what these panels of people and what legal and what auditing is going to think and all this different stuff, because I don't have those constraints anymore. And until somebody's willing to take a little risk, they're not going to be able to get past this comfortable path that they've been going down. Would it be so wrong for those lathes to ended up in some other smaller schools or, in some smaller shops where guys are actually trying to learn how to use them, or maybe a shop that's never had a lathe before so that they can now produce a new product? And instead, we're gonna put them in a landfill, or we're gonna grind them up and send the metal somewhere to some other country.
Yeah. Well, I hope that somewhere some astute junk dealer realized what he had and sold them. Somebody got some use out of them because they were still good lathes. They were just old.
Yeah, and people. You get the wrong type of person that looks at old equipment. Old equipment is some of the best running equipment we have, and it I'm not saying in every case, but at least get it to somebody that can evaluate it for the purposes that it really needs to run. And I get it. Some industries just have to have tolerances that, down to the nth degree, but the reality is not every product needs to be to that level. And so I think that it's a matter of getting it into the appropriate hands, not necessarily the professional hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mike, what if you could just achieve one thing, nothing was out of your reach, you had all the resources that you needed, and everything was firing on all cylinders and went your way, what one project would you be working on right now?
Bill, I think my mind explodes on everything that I'm working on now. that might be a hindrance sometimes. I think that, like you were saying earlier, I kind of get overextended in going down too many paths. I don't have the unobtainable goals. I don't have the one like, boy, I just wish I could do this one thing, because honestly, I don't let anything stop me. I'm working on this building. I've been working on it for a year and a half. I wish I was further along than I am because I'm anxious. But it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. All the while I'm spending time with my kids and showing them and participating with them. You've seen my pictures where they're involved in all my stuff. Because I think that people believe like, oh, I can't do this, I've got kids, or they think if I'm doing this, then I'm not spending time with my kids. Man, that I just made them a part of it. I make them a part of my life, you know, and it's not just even my kids, it's other kids too. So I love my day job. It affords me the ability to do some of the things that I'm doing here. I would never change that for the world. But my passion is this teaching, Bill. So if everything was perfect in life, I would devote my time to teaching. But I don't want to be that traditional teacher. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know how well I would operate with the level of administration that goes along with traditional teaching. So I got to create something new myself, buddy, and that's what that's my goal is to get my shop in a position to, whether it's hosting scouts or hosting 4-H or hosting metalworking clubs or whatever it is, offer that opportunity to my community. That's my goal.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, man. This has been wonderful. Talking with you, I hope that our audience can hear some of the excitement that you're expressing, and some of the just you share this in your writing as well as in your voice when you talk. I mean, there is no doubt that you're having a ball doing what you're doing and sharing. You know, I've admired watching your girls hanging cabinets with you and putting up slat wall, and I think you have one electrical socket every 3 inches or something.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but yeah.
But your girls were right there helping you to put the boxes up before you wired.
Yeah.
And
everything.
Yeah. What
I told somebody one time, I said, I have the only, when Lily was 4, she used my metal lathe. And I looked at her and I'm like, most men I know have never used a metal lathe. And I've got a 4-year-old girl helping me use that, and they don't even know. They just want to be a part of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Right. And right now, they're young enough. I'm still a cool dad. They like to spend time with me, and I'm trying to use that as much as possible for now. I know it may not stay the same forever, but right now I'm gonna capitalize on that as much as I can. Your youngest is one point I want to make before we break this up.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Jason that lived up by Chicago that when I first joined the Joes, I'd never seen one, and he extended the opportunity to come up and see his machine and to learn more about it. And seeing that in person just absolutely lit a fire. And that's what I want to encourage your community to do. If you have interest in this kind of stuff, reach out, whether it's CNC Zone or whatever forums you're on or whomever. Put an ad out there, take the time, because there's people like me and you that are out there in this community that want to share what we've learned and what we've experienced and to spark that interest. Mm-hmm. And man, when you take the time and go down that path, and you can do it at your own pace, you don't have to shell out a ton of money tomorrow or go to one of the big vendors and drop, a car's worth of money for a machine. There's ways to get into this on the economical way, and even our machines, we're a lot larger than some of the offerings that are out there, the ones that we've built. You don't have to have Megaspace, you don't have to have a Makerspace to get into it. But if your community has these maker spaces and these, areas where you can go and contribute and be a part of a community, man, I encourage you to research it and to try it out. Go spend an evening. You don't have to pay any money. Most of them will let you come for, certain nights of the week for free. Take the time and go check those out, because I think that if you could just realize the potential that you have in yourself and in your community, man, you can change the way you eat. Like I said, without even trying, you can really make this a success.
Fantastic. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Mike Heidrick. Mike, where can people get in contact with you?
So, I've got a lot of videos out on YouTube under Bloomington Mike. And then there's several builds out there. If you do a search for Bloomington Mike, it's bound to come up, or Makerspace. I'm out there. Just reach me, go to those sites and shoot me a note, and I'll be glad to get back with you. I have about a phone call a week, I think, with different people all over the world. Just folks that want to learn more about this. So
that's fantastic. Thank you again for coming on the show, and I hope you consider coming back sometime in the future. And
sure,
really enjoyed it, and I think maybe if we can arrange it sometime, that I would love you to take us on maybe a video walkthrough of your shop sometime. So we'll talk off air about that. Maybe we can get something going, to show folks what it is that I'm excited about, and that you're obviously excited about. So
that sounds great.
Yeah. So fantastic. Thank you for listening in. And
Bill, really want to thank you for what you do for us, and having this podcast and being that leader in that space and helping getting our message out. You're contributing in ways that only some of us can dream about. So really wanted to tell you how much we really appreciate what you're doing and what you've done for our DIY, CNC, and Makerspace communities.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll try and live up to it. So if folks, if you're listening and you like this episode, please feel free to leave us a comment, or the thing that would help the most would be a rating and review in iTunes for CNC Router Tips Podcast. That, in fact, we have information in the show notes about how to leave a rating and review, and that really helps. If you would like to join our private Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/CNC Router Tips. I think you'd love it there. So, with all that said, thank you again, Mike. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Mike Heidrick. He's one of more than 5,000 members of our Facebook group, #CNC Router Tips group on Facebook. If you're a member of that group, you're probably already aware of the 5K giveaway, which is a little giveaway that we're holding right now, which is scheduled to end in about a week from the time this episode is out. We'll be giving away CNC Router Tips T-shirts to 6 lucky members of the group. And if you'd like a chance to enter that contest for a shot at winning one of these free T-shirt giveaways, you can go to cncroutertips.com/enter and fill out the information, and you'll have a shot at winning one of those T-shirts. The drawings will be pulled at random from all of the eligible entries. It is limited to the continental United States only, and you must be 18 years old to enter. Check it out, guys. It's a 5K giveaway, and you can find more information on it at cncroutertips.com/enter. I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, cncroutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's CNCRT444.com/resources. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks for listening in to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I hope you'll come back and join us again soon. I'm Bill Griggs. Thank you and have a great day.